Deputy Staff Secretary to President Bill Clinton, David Goodfriend, and from the Washington Times, host of Tim Constantine's Capitol Hill show, Tim Constantine himself. Guys, we want to talk about the immigration issue and what it could mean for the campaign. But first, we got to get your reaction to this big endorsement. Multiple sources reporting now that Sarah Palin is going to endorse Donald Trump. Tim, let's start with you. What does this mean for this ongoing feud between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump?
Oh, I don't know. I saw a great quote this morning that said, I guess it's going to hurt the Sarah Palin brands, but I don't know. I'm surprised a little because she's had for a long time, had a good relationship with Ted Cruz. But, it's both people are unpredictable. You have no idea what Donald Trump is going to do on any given day. You never had any idea what Sarah Palin was going to do on any given day. So 2 peas in a pod, I guess.
David, what do you think? Does this mean anything to Donald Trump or to Ted Cruz?
Well, I defer to Tim on what it might mean within the Republican primary, but let's suppose that Donald Trump is the nominee of the party and this goes to a general election fight. At that point, the Democrats would try to wrap the image of Sarah Palin around Donald Trump real tight because the calculus on our side of the aisle is that she's not well regarded by the swing voters, by the independents, by the voters who she and the Republican Party would have to convince to come to their side. So I think it may be a Pyrrhic victory for Trump if he becomes the nominee. It may be something that seems like a great thing to him now, but could actually be an albatross for him if he does make it to the general election.
Yeah, the question is, who does she bring with her to the Trump campaign? I mean, if you're supporting Donald Trump already, does it bring anybody new into his tent?
It might Tea Party conservatives.
Well,
perhaps. I think
theoretically
it's the Tea Party conservatives, and that was her thing. That was Ted Cruz's thing. So that's the one place you could take a nick out of Ted Cruz. But truthfully, when I was at CPAC last year or at other conservative meetings, an awful big chunk of the conservative wing is over Sarah Palin. I was never a huge fan to begin with, but I will tell you, those that were last year, it was kind of, all right, enough. You know, they've had their fill. So I think it may be too little too late. I think Ted Cruz is on the rise in Iowa, and I expect big things from him.
You know, there's if I could just jump in with one thought here. Let's not forget that John McCain selected Sarah Palin as his running mate after Barack Obama had beaten Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary. And the subtextual message was, hey, all you women out there, the Democrats are bad to their women and we're good to our women. And that dog just did not hunt. So if the theory here is that Sarah Palin is somehow going to be able to be a shield against Hillary Clinton's overtures to women, I think that dog also will not hunt.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, I think that's a moot point at this stage of the game. All right, we got a couple minutes left. I do want to get to this immigration issue, and we take a look at Gallup recently. They asked voters what was the most important problem that needs to be solved. Of course, that's the economy, but they break it up to non-economic factors. Immigration comes in third. Now, gentlemen, do you think this Supreme Court case, now we're going to hear about it over the summer, is it going to raise immigration, perhaps, I doubt, above terrorism, or over dissatisfaction with the government? Does it really change anything in the immigration debate on the campaign trail?
Let's start with you, Tim.
Well, I think it's important to the immigration debate, but I think it's also important to presidential power. I think the bigger picture here is how far can a president go? Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, but how far can a president go in trying to tweak, trying to change the law of the land? We all know there are 3 branches of government. They all have their roles. The legislative branch is supposed to make law, not the executive branch. And the executive branch, when he is sworn in as president, he says he will uphold the laws, not selectively choose what he will uphold. So I think here there's an important question that goes well beyond just the single issue.
But David, isn't that kind of part of Obama's argument, is that he waited for legislation and it just never came?
Well, Tim is right. This is really an important federalism, if you will, federalism decision that would come out of the Supreme Court. I mean, President Obama pointed to actions by former presidents, including President Reagan, that he claims are right in line with this, that those cases did not make it to the Supreme Court. So perhaps there is an unanswered question as to the degree to which the president has authority on immigration issues, or whether that authority vests more squarely with the legislative branch. But I will say this. It is highly unusual for the Supreme Court to inject itself into presidential politics, which is exactly what's going on here. No matter how they rule,
If that decision comes down prior to the election date in 2016, which it looks like it will, that's significant because on both sides it has ramifications. And I really couldn't sit here and tell you that I know which way it's going to play. I mean, on the one hand,
Right.
And it's interesting, too,
And you
David,
got
because
25 states that
President
are against
Obama asked the Supreme Court to weigh in on this, at least his administration did, and if they rule against him, it's going to be something Democrats are going to have to talk about for a number of days down there, the campaign trail in the thick of it. Gentlemen, take a pause. We're going to come right back. We got more to come. We're going to talk a little bit more about Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. We'll continue this conversation right after this.
I think Trump is making a strategic error in the way he criticizes Cruz.
All right, welcome back as we continue our conversation about Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. A new poll out today shows Trump holding on to his lead. The latest NBC News Survey Monkey poll shows Trump topping Cruz by 17 points. Rubio clocks in at 11%, while Dr. Ben Carson comes in at 8%.
And we want to continue now with part two of our roundtable. Rejoining us once again, David Goodfriend and Tim Constantine. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Enjoyed our last conversation. Let's talk about Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz says Trump is a little rattled after hitting the Texas senator on his Canadian birth and campaign finance issues. Today, while accepting the endorsement from John Wayne's family, Trump took another swipe at Cruz. Take a listen.
And Ted has got a rough temperament. I don't know. You can't call people liars on the Senate floor when they're your leader. It's not a good thing to do if you want to sort of curry favor and get the positive votes later on down.
Tim, I want to start with you. What does this line of attack say to you about where Trump is going against his closest rival with just 2 weeks before the Iowa caucuses?
Well, he'll say or do anything to win. I mean, it's no surprise that Trump is going after the person that's closest to him in the polls. You mentioned the national polls, and they don't matter, of course. It's always a state-by-state contest, even in the general election, thanks to the Electoral College. And in not only in Iowa, but if you go to South Carolina or you go to California or there are a number of other states where it's a two-man race now. And I do think Trump is concerned. I think the problem he has is there's a great new ad one of the super PACs supporting Ted Cruz has that takes Trump's words from last year where he introduced Ted Cruz at an event and what a special guy he was and how great he was. And
yeah, we have that ad. So actually, if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and show that and let our viewers see it. Let's go to it. You set us up.
He took a stand recently, and it was a brave stand. And had he really had a little backing, it might not have ended Obamacare, but you would have really gotten a big chunk out of it. It's common sense. It's good government. It's so many good things. But he really is a special guy. He's now a very, very popular and important figure in all of our lives.
A classic technique there, using one's own words against him. Normally we would say this shows that Trump's attacks have backfired. But again, every time we think there's been some damning statement that Trump has made, or even as good as this ad is, it's hard to see that it will put any kind of chink in his armor. Tim?
I think Cruz is the first one to be able to stand up to Trump. You saw it in the debate the other night. All I could think of when they were talking about the Canadian citizenship issue and all, and Cruz just buried him. In that particular segment, Cruz just buried him. All I could think of was an old Bugs Bunny cartoon where he just slaps Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd around and slaps him and slaps him and slaps him, because verbally that's what Ted Cruz did, and it's the first time anyone in this campaign has stood up to Donald Trump and done it effectively.
Well, David, sorry, we're both thinking the same thing. We want you to weigh in on this. What do you think about this ad? Is it effective? Is Trump being effective with his attacks?
First of all, Tim, anybody who makes a Bugs Bunny comparison is a friend of mine. So
I love it.
I've got to do something with that singing frog cartoon, okay?
Oh, hello, my honey. Hello, my baby.
Hello, my honey.
Exactly. Now, everybody found the singing frog and thought they were going to become rich, but ended up just destitute, and nobody was able to make the singing frog work. And in this case, there's an interesting parallel here, because on both sides of the aisle, we have a pair of true breakaway frontrunners. On the Republican side, it is Trump and Cruz, and on the Democratic side, it's Clinton and Sanders. Now, to what extent does the attack really work? And here I want contrast what's going on in the two parties, because when I watched the Democratic debate, I saw some very tough barbs go back and forth between Clinton and Sanders. But it was on the issues. It was on, whose health care plan is better, who's really tougher on guns. But what's different here with Trump and Cruz is this stuff is getting personal.
Yeah.
You are not qualified to be president because of your birth. That is personal. And I just think that singing frog ain't going to cut it. It's going to really end up with destitution on all sides.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, David, because that's what Rush Limbaugh has basically been criticizing Trump. Not criticizing him for going after Cruz, but in the manner in which he does it, saying that that's not the way to do it. It's kind of a liberal way of doing it. Leave that up to the Democrats. Do you agree with that?
No, as I said, I'm going to pound my own chest here a little bit. I think on our side, much less personal vindictive, much more about where do you stand on the issues. And I think that's fine. That's democracy. Where I think there's going to be a backlash here is anytime you get really mean. I mean, look, the birther issue when it was aimed at Barack Obama, Republicans cheered. Now it's aimed at one of. How does that feel? I mean, that stuff does.
Personal indeed, for sure.
You definitely, there's some truth to that. And I like the fact that you brought up the frog because I love that Looney Tune. Anyway, totally off the subject, but I had to say that because we sing that all the time around here. Tim Constantine, David Goodfriend, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank
you.
Coming up next, we'll talk to Newsmax health editor Nick Tate about the death of Eagles frontman Glenn Frey from complications due to rheumatoid arthritis. We'll be right back.